Welcome back, Mando.
Ho! Greetings, Bucketheads. Mavar Tagar. Welcome to our 342nd Twin Sons Talking episode of Mandivision. I am your host, Nargai Tom, and thank you so much for checking out this small independent Star Wars podcast. We're so glad you're here. Reach out to us on the socials at Mando_Vision on Twitter /X and Insta. Mandivision at Blue Sky, and of course you can email the show mandivisiontom@gmail.com. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow, and share this show with all the Mandalorians in your covert. Alright, Bucketheads, we are back for our Star Wars rewatch of Rebels, and oh boy, we have a gem today. We have possibly the gem of a show that will have many, many, many fine moments. Stellar moments of drama, of emotion, of gravitas. This episode is one of the finest. I would argue that it is the finest, but I mean, again, it's debatable. It really just depends on your point of view and how you feel about certain characters moving forward. But this is a big time episode. This is the culmination of many, many things. Specifically the culmination of the return of Darth Maul into Rebels, as we sort of complete his arc in this episode and bring everything to a head. And as we do so, of course, we have to reintroduce one Obi-Wan Kenobi to the fray in an exemplary episode of just who he has become since the time of the fall of the Republic. It's a great episode. I love talking about this one. There's a lot of things that have been said about this episode over the years since it came out, since its debut. It's been talked about many, many times by many, many smart people. I don't know how much more I can add to the conversation. I think most of us have heard by now Sam Witwer's analyzation of the confrontation in the third act of the episode. And it's masterful, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Obviously, we have to get into some of those specifics, but if you are a Star Wars head on the level of myself, again, I don't know if I'm adding anything, but if you're new to the conversation, well, hey, maybe I got some interesting tidbits to share with you. All right, so I don't see any point in dilly-dallying. Again, it's Twin Sons. Like, let's just get into the episode. Let's get into these specifics and start talking about it. So let's go ahead and give you all of the pertinent information. This is Star Wars Rebels Season 3, Episode 20, Twin Sons. Original air date March 18th, 2027. Plot for this week's episode: reacting to a vision of Maul, Ezra defies Hera and Kanan to travel to a remote planet in hopes of stopping the former Sith Lord from carrying out his plans. The episode is written, directed by Dave Filoni. Henry Gilroy is also in there with a writing credit. Our primary cast for the week: Taylor Gray is Ezra Bridger. Vanessa Marshall is Hera Syndulla. Freddie Prinze Jr. is Kanan Jarrus. Steve Blum is Zeb Aurelios. Dave Filoni is Chopper. James Arnold Taylor is Obi-Wan, but only in the hologram, as he is young Obi-Wan. We have Sam Witwer as Maul. Stephen Stanton, is Ben Kenobi. Older Ben Kenobi. Alec Guinness Ben Kenobi. A very important distinction. And of course, D. Bradley Baker is Rex and the Rebel crewman. Mentioning the voice cast really quickly here, it is, I think, very fun to see that transition from Ewan McGregor to Alec Guinness Obi-Wans. So, of course, James Arnold Taylor, who had voiced the Ewan McGregor Obi-Wan for so many years in the Clone Wars and of their subsequent material, couldn't do the Alec Guinness voice. So Stephen Stanton comes in and does, I think, a very exemplary Alec Guinness Obi-Wan voice. So Good stuff in this episode. There's dialogue in here to chew on for days. And let's just get into it. What do you think, friends? You know what that means. It's time. Strap on your buckets. Let's go.
Get out of here. We'll hold them off.
You're going to have to relocate the covert.
This is the way.
This is the way.
So we open on the familiar twin suns above Tatooine, and we pan down to the desert. Just endless sand everywhere. Just sand and sand and sand. And we see one person alone in the desert, and losing their grip on sanity. And it is, of course, Maul, as he has been on Tatooine for some time, judging by his appearance. He is worn and haggard, and his clothes are torn asunder. He's covered in sand. He looks not so good. It looks like he's missing a little bit of pieces off of his metal legs. So he's been on Tatooine for some time, since the last time we saw him. And his endeavors to find Obi-Wan Kenobi have thus far proven fruitless. And he's slipping. He's losing his grip on everything because he's just continually frustrated. This thirst for revenge that he has that can't be slaked at any cost at this point. And so he's kind of at the end of his rope, and he wonders, what can he do to lure Obi-Wan out, to draw Obi-Wan out? He needs some kind of bait. And who would be better bait than Maul's future quote-unquote apprentice, Ezra freaking Bridger. Again, the two characters still have a connection. They're not tied as directly as they were before, but they still have those shards of the holocrons. And through that, Maul begins his manipulations of Ezra. Back on Atalan, at the rebel base, asleep on the Ghost, in the middle of the night, Ezra begins to hear voices. He hears Maul. And then he hears the hologram signal, the holo signal of the message that Obi-Wan sent out at the end of Revenge of the Sith, warning the Jedi not to return to Coruscant, that if you have survived Order 66, you must go into hiding. This message also played, I believe, in the first episode of Rebels, so we're sort of tying back to that to an extent. And Ezra, believing, as he tends to do, that he knows best, that he wants to do good, but he wants to find Obi-Wan to save him from Maul, believes that this is a signal from the Force that he has to go to Tatooine, find Obi-Wan Kenobi, save him from Maul, and bring Obi-Wan back into the fray. And it's an interesting conversation that stems from this. Now, obviously, the holocrons play a part in this, and so Ezra believes that the holocrons are telling him truths, that he's not being manipulated, that they're sharing information that he has to have, and that's his interpretation of it. But it's also interesting to note that when he goes to Hera and Kanan and the rest of the group to discuss this, the belief is that Obi-Wan Kenobi is dead. Bail Organa confirmed it to the Senate that Obi-Wan Kenobi is dead. Now we know why Bail Organa does these things, and he's not going to let out his little secret that Obi-Wan's still alive. After all, he has a Jedi up his sleeve for emergencies, like when Death Star plans are stolen. So Hera is reluctant to believe that Obi-Wan Kenobi is still alive, and she says as much. She's like, if Obi-Wan Kenobi were still alive, wouldn't he be here now helping us do this thing against the Empire? Not realizing that Obi-Wan has been charged with a very sacred duty, and that requires him to let the galaxy play itself out, to sort of remove himself from the galaxy at large, to be there for one Luke Skywalker. And he will say this later on in the episode 2 Maul about how he has been able to rise above and rise above like these petty individual confrontations and conflicts. But Ezra believes that he knows best and that he has to go and do this. So he's going to steal an A-Wing. He's going to head off to Tatooine. Chopper's going to come along on the ride. And they're very quickly going to get realizing, he has his little holocron fragments. Those are sort of leading the way to where he believes he needs to go. Very quickly finds himself in a trap once they land on Tatooine. The Tusken Raiders are there, and they begin blowing the heck out of that A-Wing. and sending Ezra and Chopper out into the desert. And once that job is done, who arrives to deal with the Tusken Raiders? Oh, the Tusken Raiders. An unfortunate habit of getting cut down by future Sith Lords and former Sith Lords. Maul, indeed, cuts down those Tusken Raiders. Again, this sends Ezra out into the desert, into a sandstorm. He and Chopper, they're not doing well. They're not doing great. There's hallucinations. Chopper powers down. Chopper loses power, basically. And it all looks bleak and lost. But this is Maul's plan. He will use Ezra's pain and suffering to draw Obi-Wan out from hiding. And that's what happens, because guess who arrives to save Ezra from the desert, from the sandstorms, powers up Chopper. It is Obi-Wan frickin' Kenobi. And again, it is the old Ben Kenobi, the Alec Guinness Kenobi that we know from A New Hope. And it's awesome the way they have him move around the screen, the way he conducts himself. It is very much the transformation from young Ewan McGregor Obi-Wan to Alec Guinness Obi-Wan is complete. You know, this is full on Jedi Master. I have been in, the Holy Knight Jedi Master, right? Charged with his sacred mission, and that's what he's been doing. That's what he's out there in the desert for. And this is the conversation. This is also sort of our beginning of understanding that Obi-Wan is wise now. He has vast wisdom at his resources. The way he talks to Ezra, the way he teaches, the way he imparts his knowledge and shares it with Ezra. These are all the things that we see from him in Episode 4 to Luke Skywalker. So it's a fascinating conversation. Again, very much about like how you perceive yourself, right? You think you have to do this, but you don't realize that Maul knows that that's how you think. So Maul has just tricked you into doing the thing that he wanted you to do, even though you thought you were doing it to save me. And Ezra seems to take this very seriously. He seems to understand this from Obi-Wan in a way that maybe he wouldn't have from Kanan or somebody else. Obi-Wan's way of communicating, of talking, it's just, again, it's very wise and almost like fatherly in a sense. Like, this is the wise old man who's here to impart the knowledge, right? Like that's part of so many fables, and that's what he's doing in this one. And again, we all saw it, we all were aware. But one of the other pieces of information that we get through Ezra and Obi-Wan's conversation is that Obi-Wan has been aware of Maul on Tatooine the entire time. He's just been avoiding him. He knows that Maul is going to run himself to death in the desert just looking for him. Obi-Wan's mission, his duty to protect Luke Skywalker, is so much so that he will not get involved in a petty conflict with Darth Maul. He's let go of the past. He's forgotten these things. He's moved on. What he has to do now is of the utmost importance, and something from his past is not worth risking the future for. And I thought that was a very telling moment for Obi-Wan. And again, he highlights this more directly to Maul in their confrontation, which is about to begin, because Maul arrives in the desert. Again, the plan worked. Obi-Wan knew it would work. He knew what Maul was doing the entire time. He knew that by stepping forward to save Ezra, it would force his confrontation with Maul. It was sort of inevitable now. But Obi-Wan also knew that Ezra had someplace he needed to be, that he had a part to play in everything else. So he needed to get Ezra back on track. That's why he came out of hiding. That's why he stepped forward to help Ezra, because Ezra's not supposed to be there. He has another role to play. And so we get the confrontation. Obi-Wan sends Ezra and Chopper back towards the settlements. I forget if they say Mos Eisley or Mos Espa or any of the other towns that we know. Anchorhead, maybe. I don't quite recall that. But anyways, they go off. They ride north. And now we have the confrontation. The absolute finest, in my opinion, moment in some of Star Wars history. This is absolutely brilliant material. I urge you, you know what? We're gonna get in trouble, but I'm just gonna play some clips.
Look what has become of you. A rat in the desert.
Look what I have risen above.
I have come to kill you, but Perhaps it's worse to leave you here, festering in your squalor.
If you define yourself by your power to take life, the desire to dominate, to possess, then you have nothing.
And what do you have? Why come to this place? Not simply to hide. Oh, you have a purpose here. Perhaps you are protecting something? No. Protecting someone.
And there you go. I mean, come on. The last sound you hear is Obi-Wan engaging his lightsaber, the blue light shining on him. The part of the sequence that I love the most, when Maul hits the sand with his saber, sending the sand to extinguish the fire. And we are illuminated by the stars above and by the blades in front of the characters. Red for Maul, blue for Obi-Wan, and the star field behind them. It's spectacularly gorgeous. An insanely well thought out shot by Dave Filoni and his team. It is pristinely beautiful. And here we go. We're gearing up for the confrontation, right? But what kind of confrontation are we talking about here? We have Maul fueled by his passion for vengeance, his need for revenge, his need for killing Obi-Wan Kenobi, right? And Obi-Wan is a different character now. Again, this is a lot of the stuff that's been documented before. Sam Witwer talks about it brilliantly. You can find those clips on YouTube. But the transformation that we witness in Obi-Wan Kenobi's character as he prepares to engage in the fight, from the shifting lightsaber stances that he takes to, again, the one you see, his initial stance, the young Obi-Wan, the Clone Wars Obi-Wan, the Ewan McGregor Obi-Wan stance. And then he modifies that to old Obi-Wan that we know from A New Hope. But he knows his opponent. He understands Maul and how limited Maul is, because Maul hasn't grown. Maul hasn't changed and developed. He's still stuck in the Phantom Menace, basically, right? Like, that's where he crystallizes. That's where his moments are. So Obi-Wan does something different. He goes from young Obi-Wan stance to older Obi-Wan stance to Qui-Gon Jinn stance. And Maul sees this and recognizes this because that's the moment that he lives in. And he knows that he beat Qui-Gon Jinn in that stance, and he knows what moves to do again to defeat Obi-Wan Kenobi. Except Obi-Wan Kenobi is well aware of the trap he's just laid for Darth Maul, who falls right into it because Obi-Wan's had a long time to think about how to counter what Maul did to kill Qui-Gon Jinn, and that's what he does. And it's a quick confrontation, and Obi-Wan lands the killing blow. But the way it's shot, the way it's done, the way we focus on Maul and his shifting of his feet, the way he narrows his eyes, the way he perceives Obi-Wan's stances and how he's going to process that, it's just so well thought out and so well conceived and executed. It's masterful. It really, really is. I mean, it's cinema as far as animation can go, right? Like, it's one of the most cinematic sequences in Star Wars. It's brilliant. It's extremely short. If you thought you were going to get some amazing Obi-Wan versus Anakin Mustafar battle here on Tatooine between him and Maul, not so fast, my friends, because, again, Maul hasn't grown, not the way that Obi-Wan has. And that's really what this all symbolizes. So Obi-Wan lands the killing blow. And as he's dying, Maul asks simply if the one he's protecting is the chosen one. And Obi-Wan confirms that it is. And with Maul's dying breath, he says, "He shall avenge us." And Obi-Wan, I think, feels sad. Just feels really sad for Maul that this is who he still is. Because that's not what Obi-Wan... that's not how Obi-Wan processes Luke Skywalker at all. Like, this isn't about revenge or being avenged. It's about saving the galaxy, saving people, saving freedom and liberty and democracy and justice, and all these other things that are bigger than petty revenge. It's a wonderful moment, and it marks the end of Darth Maul and all his machinations, and it's an incredible arc for the character. I have talked about it on the Clone Wars rewatch episodes we did, that when they first had announced they were bringing Maul back, I was sort of not a fan of the idea. I thought that was terrible. I thought it took away from Obi-Wan Kenobi. I was sort of resistant to the whole thing. They would eventually win me over. It took some time, but they did win me over to the resurrection of Maul. And then I think they did the most appropriate thing they could, which was, since they had resurrected Maul and they had stolen an important victory for Obi-Wan, they give it back to Obi-Wan too, which I think was a really smart and savvy move on their part. That if you're going to have this big arc with a resurrected Maul, it still has to come down to Maul and Obi-Wan. Like, who's the one who has caused the most, other than Sidious, the most traumatic event in Maul's life? It was being bisected by Obi-Wan Kenobi on Naboo. So giving Obi-Wan back that victory, I thought was really important. Even though he's such a different character now, he doesn't view it as a victory. He's just doing his duty, right? He's there to protect Luke from this characters like these. So he's just doing his duty, doing his job. And again, I think he feels a sorrow for Maul, this character who is just sort of stuck in the past, and just schemes for revenge. It's excellent. It's brilliant. It's so good. Meanwhile, returning to Atollon in Maul's starship, we get Chopper and Ezra return. Ezra apologizes, admits that he was wrong, admits that this is where he needs to be, not out gallivanting around the galaxy. He needs to focus on what they're doing now, going and getting ready for the attack on Lothal. And then we cut back to Tatooine, Obi-Wan on his dewback, riding out near a moisture farm, where we hear the audio from episode 4. I mean, they dig up some audio clips of Aunt Beru calling for Luke, and we see the silhouette of a boy running across the binary sunset back to his house. And that is where we end things. Obi-Wan's still in the desert, charged with his sacred duty and doing his sacred duty to protect Luke. And now we prepare for the Battle of Lothal. This episode's 10 buckets. It's 10 big, glorious Mandalorian buckets. It's awesome. It's so good. It's everything. It's everything. Watch this episode. The dialogue is brilliant. The execution of the animation, everything. It is stunningly brilliant. I think a flawless episode. Check it out. Watch it multiple times. I get all emotional at the end of it. I love the sequence between Maul and Obi-Wan. It hits on everything. If you know their relationship from the Clone Wars, then it hits just as hard for you, I would imagine. But check it out. 10 buckets of perfect episode. And with that, my friends, we're gonna wrap it up because we got to gear up for the Battle of Lothal. Well, one of the battles of Lothal, starting next week, all right? Get ready. The 2-part finale begins next week for Season 3 of Star Wars Rebels, and we're going to be here to talk about it. So very excited. We are hitting the high point for our rewatch. Let's go, team. All right, go out there, my friends. Buckethead Nation, you are the best. Go out into the world. Be great Star Wars fans. Get fired up. I wouldn't be surprised if by the time you hear this, there might be some new information about Mandalorian and Grogu. Maybe a new teaser's out by now. I really think we're going to get something this holiday season, but I guess we'll find out. And we'll be here to talk about it on the show because this is the Mandovision podcast, and we're all here for all the Mandalorian content. So I am your host, Nargai Tom. Thank you for the continued support of Mandovision. We would not be here without you guys. You are truly wonderful. I hope everyone's having a wonderful, happy, and safe holiday season, and we'll be with you through the new year, okay? Again, kind, supportive, respectful, understanding. Those are the kind of Star Wars fans we are in Buckethead Nation, and we'll be back next week. But this podcast, it can only end one way, friends. This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way.
You expect me to search the galaxy for the home of this creature and deliver it to a race of enemy sorcerers?
This is the way.
Admiral, we have enemy ships in Sector 47.
It's a trap!